Always two there are. A master and an apprentice.
So, the great character of Ahsoka has become one of the most popular and beloved characters in Star Wars. But why? And why is it that Ahsoka is a fan favorite while Rey is widely disliked? Well, there are many ways in which Ahsoka and Rey differ, but it all comes down to three major aspects. The first is character flaws and development. You see, despite Ahsoka being so popular today, she certainly wasn't when she was first introduced in the Clone Wars. Ahsoka had major character flaws. She was a whiny, impulsive, reckless,
You're reckless, little one.
bratty teenager. And when I say teenager, I mean it. She was just 14 when she became Anakin's Padawan. So all these flaws were intentional. It makes sense for someone this young, who has powers, to be like this. The writers purposefully wrote these flaws in so that as Ahsoka aged and got more experience and training, she would develop into a more mature, wise character with greater abilities. I mean, character development. Shocking, right? So even though you're meant to dislike Ahsoka at first, you start to really connect with her as she fails and learns from her failures. Ahsoka not only makes mistakes, but her mistakes have huge consequences. In Clone Wars Season 1, Episode 19, Storm over Ryloth, Ahsoka's flaws clearly come through when she directly disobeys orders and thinks she knows better than her more experienced leaders.
You're overreacting, Admiral. I can get us through.
But guess what? She was wrong. Instead of magically being able to complete the mission and prove how good she is forced to retreat and loses essentially all her pilots. This serves as a huge lesson to her. She starts to learn that in war, others are relying on you, and when you make mistakes, others will pay for it as well, including losing their lives, and she is responsible for every pilot that died that day. Another important episode in Ahsoka's journey is in Clone Wars Season 2, Episode 11, Lightsaber Lost, where she loses her lightsaber and seeks the help of Elder Jedi Master Zenube. Ahsoka, as this impulsive, impatient teenager, learns patience in this episode when she realizes that Master Zenube, even though he moves calmly and very slowly, always seems to be one step ahead of her.
Always seem to get ahead of me.
Here, she acquires a newfound respect for those that are older and more experienced than her, realizing that there is wisdom in patience and in listening to the older, wiser leaders. These two episodes are examples of how Ahsoka's character flaws started to be slowly stripped away as she matured and acquired more experience. By the end of Season 2 of Clone Wars, Ahsoka is already a completely different person than she was when she was first introduced. And yet, that still doesn't mean that she stops making mistakes. As a matter of fact, the biggest mistake she ever made was in Clone Wars Season 7, when she lets her emotions cloud her judgment in regard to Maul's vision of Anakin. Ahsoka at this point is already beloved by fans, and is pretty wise. That does not mean she is perfect, and that always makes for a much more compelling character than any type of Mary Sue character. So despite her having learned so much at this point, now having become much wiser, calmer, and experienced, and mostly in control of her emotions, she is really attached to Anakin. There is no one she loves more than him, and in a critical error, she lets her emotions get in the way. The consequence of this affects the whole galaxy as Anakin falls to the dark side just like Maul had warned her. They also made it so there would be very personal consequences for her as well, apart from Anakin, as she lost all her clone trooper friends in the ship she was in, aside from Rex. And to think she could have possibly avoided all this had she made the right decision. Yet now, she stands in front of a sea of clone helmets, painted with her symbol, her loyal friends gone, and she is left alone, burying the dead. Just a second. I'm just gonna get some tissues. Okay. One of the things that makes this so well written is that we understand why Ahsoka made the choices she did. The strongest bond she ever had was with Anakin. This makes it all the more conflicting because even though you know she's making a huge mistake in going against Maul, you understand her. You understand why. I mean, who hasn't let their emotions affect their judgment, right? But with Rey, well, you don't really relate to her because she doesn't really have big failures. This results in us not connecting with Rey, which is ironic because when you're introduced to Rey, you're meant to like her. And she does have some relatable traits at first. She's a poor orphan struggling to survive in the harsh world she lives in. So here, in terms of likability, she's in a better position than Ahsoka was when she was first introduced. The problem comes later, because while Ahsoka experiences major failures that change who she is, Rey doesn't. Rey's character development is stunted by the lack of significant mistakes that she can learn from. What real, huge mistakes has Rey ever made that changed her and helped her develop into a more mature person? None. How can you develop a character if they won't make mistakes that they can learn from? Or that will at least change them and have major consequences? I am not saying that Rey has not made any mistakes. The problem is that her mistakes have no lasting consequences. A perfect example is when she loses control of her abilities and explodes a ship, thinking she killed Chewbacca in Rise of Skywalker. But it's like, nope, no worries, everything's fine because guess what? Chewie wasn't on the ship. So she's affected at first, but then finds out Chewie is alive, and we move on. But what about the stuff that happens to her or around her that does have lasting consequences? Well, it is never really a direct consequence of a mistake that she made. And it is impossible to develop a relatable character if you do not have them make mistakes and learn from them. Unlike Ahsoka, who must confront the consequences of her actions, Rey's character is shielded from personal growth through the experience of meaningful failure. This leads us to the second major difference between Ahsoka's and Rey's arc, the development of skills. Well, in Rey's case, just skills, because there is no big development. I mean, let's take a look at Star Wars The Force Awakens. Despite the initial things that make Rey likable, like her tough upbringing, she then goes on to just know everything. Honestly, she knows how to pilot any ship she runs into. She knows how to override the Millennium Falcon's control system and how to repair it, sometimes figuring stuff out before Han.
What'd you do?
I bypassed the compressor.
She resists mind control from a highly trained Force user without any Force training ever, and she beats Kylo Ren in a lightsaber duel, even though it is her first time ever holding a lightsaber. There is no struggle to master her abilities. This leads her to have no character arc because she is never beaten. In The Mandalorian Season 2 finale, Luke said that powers without training is nothing.
Talent without training is nothing.
Really? How come Rey was able to beat Kylo then, even though it was her first time igniting a lightsaber? No one knows how to just do stuff without someone teaching it to them. So how is anyone supposed to relate? Ahsoka, on the other hand, slowly develops her skills throughout the Clone Wars, with Anakin teaching her. She very clearly depends on Anakin and slowly becomes more skilled and able to handle herself. To demonstrate this, let's compare a similar situation early on in Ahsoka's story to Rey's story, where they both get captured. In The Force Awakens, Rey is captured by Kylo Ren, a highly skilled Force user, powerful in the dark side. At this point, she has never used the Force ever before. She has no training in the Force whatsoever, but she manages to resist Kylo's attempt to penetrate her mind with the Force. After he leaves, Rey suddenly also knows how to mind control a guard to remove her restraints, managing to escape by herself. In contrast, when Ahsoka is captured by the bounty hunter Cad Bane in Clone Wars Season 2, Episode 2, Cargo of Doom, she is not able to escape, even though she has been training in the Jedi Temple since she was a child, and Cad Bane isn't even a Force user. So her master, the more skilled Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, has to come in and save her. So Ahsoka's abilities are very clearly limited in the beginning when compared to more experienced Jedi. With training and discipline, however, being trained by the Chosen One, the strongest Force user to ever exist, her skills develop and she becomes more powerful. The development of her skills are beautifully portrayed in Tales of the Jedi Season 1, Episode 5, titled Practice Makes Perfect, where while all the Jedi are trained with only remotes and technology that simulate battle droids, Anakin decides to train Ahsoka against the clone troopers, since Anakin disagrees with training the Jedi only against droids because he deems it to be too easy. So she spends years training against her clone trooper friends, being able to hold off against them for longer and longer as years go by, which leads her to survive Order 66 and save Rex's life. Anakin saved her life once again, indirectly this time, by training her in the most difficult way he could find. The third and last big difference between these two characters is their Master-Apprentice relationship. The Master-Apprentice relationship has always been central to Star Wars.
Always two there are. No more. No less.
And Ahsoka and Anakin's relationship perfectly embodies this. Anakin becomes a huge part of Ahsoka's life as her master, and Ahsoka a huge part of Anakin's life as his apprentice. They become important to each other. Their relationship goes deeper than that eventually, as they form a big brother-little sister bond, just like Ahsoka said in Clone Wars Season 7, Episode 5.
My older brother taught me.
This means that Anakin becomes very protective of Ahsoka and does everything in his power to keep her from getting hurt, which includes training her in the most rigorous way he can to ensure that when he is not around to protect her, she is able to protect herself. And for Ahsoka, this means that Anakin is the person she looks up to and admires, the person she trusts the most. Their bond is one of the key aspects of the Clone Wars show and certainly plays a role in making it a great show. We all have those we admire and learn from, and Ahsoka is surrounded by skilled, competent characters who teach her and help her grow, from Anakin and Obi-Wan to Captain Rex, Master Plo Koon, Master Yoda, among others. So when Rey goes to Luke, we expect her to learn a lot from him as they develop a Master-Apprentice bond of their own, except Luke is, well, he pains me to say this, but kind of a pathetic loser. So this person who is supposed to be the most skilled and competent person in Rey's life now, the person who she is supposed to look up to and learn from, is nothing like who he's supposed to be. This, of course, is an aspect of failure not only in the writing of Rey's character, but also in the writing of Luke's character. But that's another whole topic of its own. This now breaks the Master-Apprentice dynamic, which has been always so important in Star Wars. Rey has no real, true teacher. This becomes another unrelatable aspect for the audience in Rey's life because we all have someone who we look up to and learn from the most, and Rey lacks that. So the success she has after this is once again mostly from herself. This makes Rey to be the most competent person in the story since she does not have a lot of competent people around her, which is highly contrasted with Ahsoka because, as mentioned before, Ahsoka had a huge number of competent teachers around her, like Elder Jedi Master Zenube, which taught her patience and led her to respect those more experienced than her, as we mentioned in the beginning of the video, to Master Yoda, Obi-Wan, etc. So Ahsoka's triumphs, victories, and achievements are in huge part because of Anakin and her teachers. This is exactly what she says to Anakin after she's able to survive being hunted in Clone Wars Season 3, Episode 22, Wookiee Hunt. When I was out there, alone, all I had was your training and the lessons you taught me, and because of you, I did survive. And not only that, but I was able to lead others to survive as well. The same goes for everything that happens later on in her life, including fighting Maul, surviving Order 66, saving Rex, defeating Inquisitors, etc. Therefore, while Anakin is clearly superior to Ahsoka in the Force and in skill, which puts him in the position as the master and teacher to Ahsoka, Rey is like... and seems to be the one trying to teach Luke to be hopeful again. All she has is one scene with Luke teaching her to reach out with the Force, and when she reaches out to the dark side, he immediately gives up. That's it. That's the training. Then she is seen swinging her lightsaber with Luke peeking at it. But where did she even learn those moves? Luke didn't teach her. She just kinda knows it, I suppose. Even the lightsaber fighting is actually rich in depth in the Star Wars universe with many different forms, but there isn't a single scene of Luke training her with a lightsaber or teaching her any form of lightsaber fighting. So in the end, mainly for the first 2 movies in the sequel trilogy, Rey has no teacher. She's just really good at stuff and teaches herself, I suppose. There's no master-apprentice relationship developed. It's just Rey and Luke arguing in the first half of the movie, at which point she just leaves and never has a conversation with Luke again for the rest of The Last Jedi movie. Yep, sometimes it's hard to comprehend how they could make so many mistakes and screw up these characters so bad. But somehow they did it. So yeah, the writing of Rey's character has problems, big problems. But wow, Ahsoka really was done right. Actually, all of Dave Filoni's animated projects have been fantastic. So even though I personally dislike the sequel trilogy, very much so, I love Clone Wars, Rebels, and Tales of the Jedi. If you haven't watched them, I highly recommend them. And I am hoping that Dave Filoni got complete control over the live-action Ahsoka show because I am actually really excited for it. And well, here's to hoping it's great. Also, this is the channel's first video, so if you like this video, leave your like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what other topics you want me to cover. With the Ahsoka show coming out, we'll definitely have lots to discuss.